Hi, I'm Lauren McCracken, and you're watching episode 8 of my podcast, Cracken's Corner, Bullying and Self-Image. So, before we get started, just a note, this past week has been kind of crazy. There's been a lot of stuff going on, good and bad and beautiful and tough, just like a whole lot of different things happening between our two families. Good news is our little baby niece Avery was born on Friday, so we're very happy to welcome her into the world. We also had a really good time at my cousin's wedding on Saturday. My cousin Blaze and Paris, as we've mentioned in the previous podcast, they had a gorgeous ceremony, beautiful reception. It looked like something out of a Hallmark movie. It was really neat. Also, Sunday was Father's Day, so we got to spend time with our dads, and it was also our anniversary, and it's my nanny's birthday, so we're running around like a lot. It's been a really crazy couple months, because I feel like from March through July, there's just so many birthdays and holidays and anniversaries and special days. It's kind of crazy, but it's nice. It's been kind of tough. My nanny was just recently hospitalized, so I'm really hoping to visit her soon. I know there's still a lot of restrictions in place because of COVID, so it's kind of hard to time everything out when there's a limited number of people able to go in and visit at one time. Also, I'm wishing a lot of prayers and speedy recovery to my best friend Brian as he's dealing with some serious medical issues. I'm hoping to get a chance to talk to him soon, and hopefully he'll be doing much better very soon. Also, this week we got to celebrate our little thing at work that I had been mentioning before, our kind of like office inspired, like Dundee's Award inspired thing to recognize all my fellow employees, as we were all essential workers through all the craziness over the last year and a half. I think sometimes you just need to hear something nice when you've been working your ass off, and it was a good opportunity to let everybody kind of like very subtly give compliments to each other anonymously and feel good about themselves, because I think they all deserve it. So yeah, before we get into the topic, this is a very hard topic for me to talk about, if I'm being honest. It was hard to write because it forced me to go back into places that I haven't been in a long time within my own memory and really the story of my life. But I think it's important to talk about, and because it's sensitive information, obviously I'd like to put out lots of trigger warnings, because I'm pretty sure it's going to hit almost everyone you can think of. And if that's not your thing, if that's not something you feel comfortable listening to, I totally understand. I respect that, and I'm happy to see you on the next podcast, which I'm sure will be a much lighter subject than this. But if you're down to hear about some real shit, then I'm here. And yeah, I'm glad that I feel able to talk about this, as difficult as it might be, because hopefully it'll make you feel a little bit less alone. If this is something you're dealing with, or someone you love is dealing with, then maybe it will help you to help them better. So I found like the best quote for this, and it's one I've heard before, but I just wanted to look it up to make sure I got it right. It goes, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And that was Maya Angelou, and, you know, amazing person, extremely inspirational. And she kind of hit the mark in this comment about our emotional memory. It's the strongest and longest lasting memory, at least form of memory, are the things that are extremely emotionally charged. And this is a huge part of why bullying is so detrimental to your mental health and to your self-image, and later on even in your physical health. It can really take a toll on you in ways you wouldn't expect long after you're out of that situation. Mental, physical, spiritual, it hits you in all these different dimensions if you've been targeted, and it can permanently alter your self-image. So after an unimaginable amount of harm has been done to a person through these sort of actions, I would absolutely recommend seeking every form of support and therapy possible, because it's essential. I mean, this is a form of trauma just like any other kind, so it needs to be taken just as seriously as any other kind. When we hear about the word bullying, many of us at least, often first imagine like a schoolyard and children being mean to each other and pushing each other around. But the reality is that this can happen to anyone at any age. Anyone can bully anyone else. Really, the biggest factor in this is power, because that's what it's all about. It's about exercising their power over someone they perceive to be weaker and dominating them and making them feel like they're somehow deficient. And it's really messed up. I really just want to put this out here so others know that you don't deserve to be treated like this. You should never blame yourself for this, and really to hold those who make these sort of actions accountable and to know that it's wrong. You know, whether that's simply by talking to them or by some sort of higher up reprimanding them, or through the legal system if that's necessary. That's totally an option. So for a really good example of this, I remembered this story, and it's called Life. It was originally a manga written by Kiko Tsunobu way back in the early 2000s. It was an excellent manga, and then I believe one of the Japanese TV stations were able to adapt her work into a live action series, which was about 11 episodes long, back in like 2007. And I remember watching this as a teenager, and it really struck a chord in my heart. And I was like, whoa, you know, they really knew how to showcase this in all of its graphic, dirty detail and all of the forms that this kind of violence and cruelty can take, because it is very nuanced and it can be subtle if you don't know what to look for, and it can be sneaky and it can be underhanded. It's like a masterclass, this series, in all the different forms that this can take and what it can look like and how it can affect people. And later on, you really see how it develops. It also deals with a lot of really difficult topics. So, of course, trigger warning, happy to put that out there just to protect anyone from something that they don't feel comfortable hearing about. It does mention things like self-harm, suicide, rape, sexual harassment, blackmail, manipulation, physical abuse, and social ostracization. It's painful. It's a difficult watch, especially as someone who is highly sensitive. But I feel like, once again, it's necessary, because it's important to be aware of what is out in the world and what people are capable of, so you know how to deal with it a little bit better. So like I mentioned, it was adapted from the original manga series, which was a graphic novel series, and the main focus of the story is between Ayumu, who's a first-year high school student, and the main antagonist, the main bully, Manami. Without going into too much detail or giving too much away, there are extremely graphic depictions that it captures, like I mentioned, but they're great examples of social exclusion, humiliation, manipulation, harassment, physical assault, verbal abuse, and property destruction, which are all different things people can do to try to control other people and harm them. In the story of Ayumu versus Manami is really far from the only dynamic that's demonstrated throughout this. It's presented as various other characters do the same thing. They exercise their power to dominate and harm others. And we see some students doing this to other students. We see teachers doing it to other teachers, teachers doing it to other students, students doing it to teachers, parents doing it to other parents, adults versus adults. Every dynamic you can imagine, because in reality, it's really about who has more power and how they choose to exercise that to harm other people. They're really focused on gaining or maintaining their power over others. It may be social, could be financial motivations, or emotional, but all these things are done to subjugate others to their will and make themselves feel better. As we see the story develop, we start to learn some of the motivations behind the various people who engage in this bullying. Some are motivated to keep themselves at the top of the social hierarchy, while others are convinced that if they don't participate in the bullying, then they themselves will become targeted, and they're just trying to avoid that by being the bullies themselves. Others are coerced through threats of violence or humiliation to join in, while still others, which is probably the one you don't hear about enough, are straight up sociopaths and sadists, because I feel like they're probably the most difficult to handle, because these people do not feel sorry for their victims. They don't. They never will. So it's very difficult to deal with someone like that, because they have no empathy. At least not for those people. And as the show evolves, you see Ayumu start to gain her footing back despite all these extremely bleak circumstances. And it goes into some, like I said, really dark corners. She finds a few trustworthy friends and really starts to shift her focus towards finding her own happiness, standing up for herself, and then later on even standing up for others, as she really just wants to eradicate this problem from her school and, in a wider sense, from her world, because she sees it all around her. When offered the chance at revenge later in the series, she takes the high road and refuses to participate in it, even though we as viewers watching it may kind of feel conflicted about that and maybe want to see her take revenge. Some part of us has that cathartic desire, and she still just is like, no, I'm not going to stoop to that level because I know it's wrong. And there's something so empowering and inspiring about that, because in truth, if everyone thought that way, it just wouldn't happen anymore. We just would see it stop. But unfortunately, we don't live in that kind of a world. Though, one thing I really like about Ayumu is that she takes the whole phrase of be the change you wish to see in the world super literally, and is like, you know what, not only am I not going to participate in this, I'm going to defend people who are being attacked. I'm going to do everything in my power to make this stop. And there's this sort of reoccurring theme throughout the series of utopia and searching for utopia and making the world better. And they sort of subtly hint at this with sunflowers, because in the language of flowers, one of the things that sunflowers are attributed to are this symbol of utopia and always looking towards the sun, always looking toward a brighter future and things being better tomorrow. And somehow, despite like the crazy ride that you end up taking watching this show, you're still left with this sense of hope, and that like, yeah, maybe things can get better. I don't think we're ever going to live in a world where it completely stops and everyone's kind to each other, or at least decent to each other. But we can take steps within our own lives to at least try to make that closer to reality. So yeah, this is the part that's really hard for me to talk about. But I feel like, once again, it's important, because owning your story and owning the narrative of your life is important. And that's something I've tried to make a priority in my own world. And I feel like that helps you better connect with others. So I'm going to try to do that. And as hard as this really is, I'm going to try to open up a part of myself that's extremely vulnerable. And yeah, please bear with me, because I don't know if I can get through this without crying, but I'm going to try my best. For me, I was bullied a lot in grade school. Without going into too much detail, I'll try to explain. it really started, I guess, when I was in like 3rd grade. And it was between a few different people, you know, over the years. Sometimes it would change. But I started out as this happy, outgoing, confident kid. And I found myself slowly becoming anxious and quiet and trying to avoid attention. I turned into a completely different person who wasn't who I started out as. There were other people who were also targeted, and I saw that. And I'm ashamed to say I never stood up for them, because I wish if I could go back in time, I would. Because I know how hard it is. But the good news is, at least from what I know now, those people are happy and successful and they're doing well. And I'm really glad to see that. When I think back to what I dealt with, there were instances of people giving you fake compliments, so you think they're being nice, but actually they're insulting you, or they're trying to make a dig at you to get you to embarrass yourself. Rumors, insults of all kinds from all sorts of people. Having things thrown at me. That was cool. Attempting to hit me with things. And yeah, you know, social isolation, which is brutal on somebody, on anyone. But especially to a kid. Any kid. I mean, at that point, you're still figuring out who you are and trying to make your self-image into something solid. But it's hard to develop that and figure that out if everyone around you is sending you mixed messages. You know, like you get some support. I'm happy to say I had some friends, so I wasn't completely alone. But if enough people tell you there's something wrong with you, then you start to believe it. And it's very hard for you to think that there isn't some kind of grain of truth in there. Because of this, I was sick really often, and I missed a lot of school, especially in like 7th grade. I was getting really bad anxiety. I suddenly had depression, and I had my first panic attack when I was 12 years old, because it just got so bad. I used to blame myself for it. I thought that maybe if I was less weird, or if I looked different, if I was prettier, if I wasn't a chubby young girl, if I looked more my age, because some people made fun of me for looking too young. Like I looked like a little girl instead of whatever, a teenager. I guess a young teenager at that point. That maybe would stop. I thought maybe if they could just see who I was instead of looking at all my flaws and see how kind I tried to be to everyone, that maybe they would just realize they were being mean and they would cut it out. But it never made any difference. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. I spent a lot of days coming home from school and just running up to my room, and I didn't know how to handle it. I feel like most kids don't, and really most adults who deal with this also don't. It's not surprising then to hear that when things were really bad, I had suicidal thoughts because I was afraid to live. It's not so much that I didn't want to exist, but that I was afraid to exist. And no one should ever have to feel like that. But I'm grateful that I had really good parents and really solid friends. And I had a really strong faith in God and in the future, and that things would be better in high school. And I really did believe in that. And I believe that there's something called karma, and out in the world, it's going to come back around to people. And there's justice. Those things are real. And they're solid. And you just have to keep moving, even when things are hard. Even when you don't want to keep going. So I did. And as hard as it was, I've managed to graduate. Thank God. And high school was a lot better. I did have some people try to give me a hard time in high school, but it was nowhere near what I had experienced at that time. Also, part of the reason why I was being picked on in high school was because I stood by one of my friends when they came out as LGBT at a time when that was hard to do. So I was proud to be ostracized and picked on for being a real friend because I knew I was doing the right thing. And I know, especially this month during Pride Month, that this is something that affects so many young LGBT kids. And it breaks my heart because they should never have to feel this way to be themselves. And you should never have to feel like you need to hide who you are. But I'm so proud of my friend and all of my friends who have since been brave enough to come out and speak their truth. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to make real friends to help me get through those sort of times in my life. And thank God, as an adult now, I don't deal with that stuff anymore. But I know that it could happen to anyone, and it could happen again, though I feel like I'd probably handle it differently as an adult. Just a few insights that I have about this. I discussed earlier, your motivations can be really different, but sometimes if you can figure out why this person is treating you this way, it may help you figure out how to approach it. So there are different measures that can be taken if this is happening to you or someone you love. Talking to someone is the first thing I'd recommend. Someone you trust, someone you can rely on, whether that's a parent or a teacher or a friend, whoever. Just someone you can actually trust. If this is a situation where an adult is bullying another adult, then I absolutely recommend documenting all of these things as they occur, because there may be legal proceedings that you want to pursue in the future. Measures of protection and assault charges, things like that, are definitely viable options if this is between two adults. You can consider confronting this person about their behavior, though, of course, it depends on the situation and what's going on and a lot of other factors. You may feel comfortable doing this on your own. You may want to have a team of people with you so you're not by yourself. If this person is extremely physically dangerous, or you have reason to believe they may be, then this probably doesn't make much sense. You might want to go another route and get the police involved if that's your case, which is fine if that's what you have to do. Whatever you need to do to protect yourself is ultimately the right thing. Also, if this is happening to you as an adult in maybe a work situation, which I have seen happen to other people, you may want to try to mediate with your HR team if they actually do anything, because a lot of them don't seem to be helpful. And that's just what I've found out, from friends who have been in these kind of situations before. Other ones are helpful, so maybe that's an avenue to explore. Of course, there's always the option of avoiding this person, whether that means just staying away from them or going to a different team, or maybe even leaving a job or a school or a neighborhood or whatever to get away from them, because ultimately this is something going on within this bully. This is something going on within themselves. It's nothing to do with you. They're projecting their insecurities and their problems and whatever it is that they feel like they lack in their lives onto someone that they perceive to be weaker. So as hard as it is, you have to try not to take it personally. I think the biggest thing is to remember that it's not your fault. There is literally nothing you could ever do that would justify someone treating you this way. Ever, period. Like I said, this is coming from an insecurity within themselves, or because they are actually sociopathic and they like to see other people suffer and they enjoy manipulating people. So that's a deficit on their part. That has nothing to do with you. So I would absolutely recommend seeing someone professionally to help deal with this kind of trauma and help you to develop a more accurate self-image, so you don't hate yourself and not want to be here anymore because your life has value, and you have value, and you are not a replaceable person in this world. It is never too late to get help and to reach out if this is something you're dealing with. Even if this happened to you a long time ago, it's still a good idea to talk to somebody about it. It's going to help. So thank you for bearing with me through that as I somehow got through it. I really want to thank everybody for listening and for all of the feedback. I know this is something that has a lot of stigma tied to it, and it's really hard to talk about, but all the more reason for us to talk about it and try to remove some of that stigma. I'm really grateful to everyone who watches this, who likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. Like I said, I'm really trying to build a positive community where people can lift each other up and help each other out and give everyone a bit of a break from the craziness of the world around us. If you have any questions, any comments, if you have any ideas, please send them to our email, CrackensCornerPodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, thank you so much for all the support that I have gotten so far. I really do appreciate that. And I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you soon. I love you. Have an awesome day. Bye.